Lee Anderson didn't just take aim at Labour, he obliterated them live on national television. What unfolded was so raw, so unfiltered, that it left the entire panel in stunned silence. No polite political back and forth, no carefully rehearsed lines. Instead, Anderson tore straight into Labour's record, their scandals and their broken promises, and the way he did it has people saying this was one of the most brutal takedowns they've ever seen on TV. It all started when Anderson was asked a simple question about Labour's so-called vision for Britain. And instead of the usual vague political answer, Anderson launched into a furious assault that had everyone watching scrambling to catch their breath. He called out Labour's complete betrayal of working-class communities, accusing them of abandoning the very people they once claimed to stand for. His words weren't just sharp, they were cutting like a blade. Anderson pointed to Labour's record in government, reminding viewers of the chaos left behind, the rising immigration numbers, the housing shortages, and the endless promises that never seemed to materialise. He declared that Labour wasn't just unfit to lead, they were dangerous. His voice rose as he hammered the point that while ordinary families were struggling to pay bills, Labour politicians were more focused on political games and internal squabbles. The atmosphere in the studio shifted instantly. You could almost feel the tension through the screen as he demanded answers no Labour representative seemed prepared to give. "What has Labour ever done for the working man in the last 10 years?" he roared. Nothing but empty speeches and betrayal. His fury was matched with cold, hard numbers. Statistics about crime asylum costs and the tax burden crushing families. Viewers couldn't believe how direct he was being. Then came the moment that truly stunned the room. Anderson turned his fire directly at Labour's leadership. He accused them of hypocrisy, claiming they preached fairness and justice while covering up scandals and corruption. He didn't mince words, describing them as a party that had lost its soul and was now nothing more than a hollow shell clinging to power. The camera caught the reactions of those around him, and for a brief second, nobody dared to interrupt. But Anderson wasn't done. He leaned forward, pointing out how Labour had voted against key measures to control illegal immigration, even while the crisis in the Channel was spiralling out of control. He accused Labour of siding with activists instead of with British families, and of putting ideology ahead of national security. They don't want to fix the problem, he thundered. They are the problem. The bluntness of his words drew gasps, and it was clear he wasn't going to soften the blow. Every sentence seemed to land like a hammer strike. Viewers later described it as watching someone rip off a mask and expose the truth. Anderson kept pressing, reminding the audience that Labour had the chance to stand with the public, but instead chose to block reforms, delay action, and protect their own political interests. It was the kind of attack you rarely see on live television, because most politicians hold back. Anderson didn't hold back at all. By this point, even his opponents looked rattled. You could see them shifting in their seats, fumbling for words. But Anderson just kept going, laying out example after example, from rising asylum hotel costs to Labour's refusal to support stronger border measures. And when one Labour defender tried to interject, Anderson snapped back so fiercely that the interruption barely lasted 2 seconds. It was brutal, it was raw, and it was utterly compelling. The climax of his tirade came when Anderson accused Labour of betraying not just voters but the entire nation. He said, "If Labour ever takes power, it won't be the people who win. It'll be the gangs in Calais, it'll be the elites in Westminster, it'll be every single person who wants to tear down Britain instead of building it up." The bluntness hit like a punch, leaving no room for misunderstanding. By the time he finished, the studio was left in silence. Labour's representatives looked crushed, and even the host seemed lost for words. Anderson had gone further than anyone expected, dismantling Labour live on TV in a way that will be remembered for years. Viewers rushed online, flooding social media with clips of the moment, calling it the most savage destruction of Labour we've ever seen. Anderson didn't just expose Labour's failures, he dismantled their entire narrative live point by point, with the kind of precision that made it impossible for them to escape. He went straight for the heart of Labour's promises, tearing apart their so-called policies, and leaving them looking like nothing more than empty slogans. He asked a devastating question that cut through the noise. Labour say they stand with ordinary people. But tell me this, when was the last time Labour actually stood up for the working class? The silence that followed spoke louder than any answer could. Anderson didn't stop there. He slammed Labour for their record on crime, pointing out how violence on Britain's streets had spiralled while Labour politicians argued over political correctness. "They'd rather lecture you on language than protect your family from criminals," he thundered. The audience reaction was immediate. Online people described the moment as a political earthquake. Some said they couldn't believe a politician had the guts to say these things out loud on live TV without hesitation. But that's exactly what made the moment so electrifying. Anderson wasn't playing the usual political game. He was calling Labour out in real time with no safety net. Anderson then brought up the migrant crisis again, saying Labour's approach was nothing short of a national disgrace. He reminded viewers how Labour blocked key legislation, how they accused anyone demanding stronger borders of being heartless, and how their MPs lined up to attack reforms instead of supporting them. While British families struggle to find homes, Labour are happy to see hotels filled with illegal migrants. That's not compassion, that's betrayal. The words rang out like a verdict. Then came the killer blow. Anderson compared Labour's leadership to a gang of career politicians clinging to power at any cost. He accused them of caring more about Twitter applause and activist approval than about real people. His line that had the internet buzzing was this: Labour aren't fighting for Britain. They're fighting for themselves, and if they ever get into power, Britain loses. The impact of that statement was explosive. Every attempt from Labour's defenders to push back fell flat. They tried to talk over him, they tried to drown him out, but Anderson's voice was too forceful, too relentless. And every time they spoke, he countered with a sharper, more devastating line. At one point, when a Labour MP tried to defend the party's record on housing, Anderson cut them down instantly. Housing? You had over a decade in power, and what did you leave behind? Broken communities and a generation priced out of homes. Don't lecture me. The Labour side froze. What made the takedown even more brutal was how Anderson tied Labour's failures to the everyday struggles people face. Rising bills, rising, crime, rising immigration. He connected them all back to Labour's decisions, Labour's priorities, and Labour's weakness. It wasn't abstract politics. It was real, and it hit home. Every policy Labour pushes comes with a price, he said, and that price is paid by you, the taxpayer, the worker, the family just trying to get by. The final moments were the most dramatic. Anderson looked directly at the camera and delivered one of the harshest lines of the night Labour talk, about change, but the only change they bring is more chaos, more lies, and more betrayal. Britain deserves better, and it will never get it from Labour. It was a closing statement so sharp that social media exploded within seconds. Clips were shared across platforms, headlines were written before the show even ended, and thousands of comments poured in praising Anderson's ferocity. By the end of the broadcast, Labour's image was in tatters. The debate wasn't remembered for anything they said. It was remembered for how Anderson dismantled them in real time. It was a performance so brutal, so unforgiving, that many are now saying Labour might never recover from the blow. Whether you agree with him or not, one thing is certain. Lee Anderson didn't just challenge Labour, he destroyed them. Live for the whole nation to see.